Here again, questions, answers, fun. Something here doesn't make sense. We're going to get some technical stuff, maybe some stuff you might have seen in the Schoolhouse Rock, I'm Just a Bill thing, but it's a little more detailed than that. So if you have any questions as we go through this, let me know. Again, if you're hashtagging anything on social media, CornRoots. Shane and I are talking to each other currently on the CornRoots hashtag. So we were there at the Capitol today, and I thought about this when we were walking out. They often equate, you don't want to see how laws or sausage are made. It's an old adage, and I was thinking that, well, this is being the empty Capitol building, it's kind of like the empty butcher shop or the empty meat processing plant. This is when it happens, when it's all cleaned up and ready to go before they start bringing this stuff through. Lawmaking, sausage making, it's all kind of messy, and it takes a lot of stuff you probably don't want to know about, but we're going to talk about some of that today. So we had a slide yesterday that showed you a collage of pictures like this, with all those blank spaces in there. And then the second slide showed you the picture of all the corn farmers and all the corn product that started in there. Again, you guys, the industry, anybody involved in this, or any issue particularly, a particular interest, can be involved in this process before, during, and after, and have to be involved before, during, and after the lawmaking process to make sure that these things are done in the most diligent way possible, the most correct way possible, however you want to term it, because it takes citizen involvement, it takes grassroots involvement, it takes the personal experience involvement and knowledge you all can bring to the table for these lawmakers to truly get these things right. Otherwise, they're just going to go off by the seat of their pants and either not do anything or do stuff that's going to negatively impact what you're trying to do. And we see that on a daily basis from the federals on down to the locals, right? So let's talk about how a corn bill becomes a law. First off, we've got two sides to deal with. What we talked about with the House and the Senate. It's the same at the federal level as it is at the state level. For most of these examples, we're going to be using the Missouri legislature as the example here. So we've got the House and the Senate. A bill is filed, it's often filed in both bodies, but so it's called companion bills. Maybe it's the exact same language, maybe it's a little different version, but a bill can be filed in either body, the House or the Senate. For the purpose of this example, we'll start with one body and move it forward because it's going to journey through the entire building by the time we're done here. So we've got two sides to deal with, the House and the Senate. Not just for the bill creation, the bill origination, the bill introduction, but also for the membership. You know, everybody's going to have a piece, or everybody's got something to say about the journey of this bill. So the bill is introduced. This will be our state senator from wherever. She's going to introduce the bill to the body. And that's as simple as standing up in front of in the Senate chamber and saying, I have a bill. The Senate President says send the bill forward. The bill is sent forward. Then it's entered into the Senate Journal, as we discussed. It's entered into the record. That bill is introduced. And that's basically, you know, you can make a grandstanding speech about it, but for about 90% of the cases, the bill is just said, I have a bill. Or oftentimes, I have a stack of bills. And they just send a stack of paperwork forward to the officials' hands at that dais where we got our picture taken earlier. And then those are entered into the record. And usually there's no description, no public description at that time. Then those bills are entered into the journal, they're entered into the records, etc. At this point, you know, before, during, and after, again, opinions are being issued by interest groups. By the way, we're a special interest group. We are, you know, whether you're as a member of the corn growers, as a member of your local community, as a member of the constituency, your state rep, or your state senate district, your congressional district, you're an interest group because you have various interests. You're part of something. Even if it's something only you're concerned about, you're a special interest, or I'm a special interest. So our special interests, the media, lobbyists, other legislators, they're stepping forward and saying yes, no, maybe on the future or the content of this piece of legislation. So everybody's expressing their opinions all throughout this process, before, during, and after. And the lobby corps, they're paid to be aware. They're paid to monitor. Sam, what are you doing right now? Monitoring legislation was the correct answer.
Yes. I am doing that too.
Yeah. Yesterday I was sitting next to her. She was watching bills be filed. I saw her refreshing the website for the House bill page, the legislation page, to see what new bills have been filed. And she was reading bills, and she was showing me, oh, look how they messed this up. Or look, it's actually what you did tell me. Look how because they cut off, they didn't file the whole bill or something. It was weird how the thing was done. But there's something technical wrong with the bill that she was showing me. So she's paid to be aware, just as the oil industry guy is paid to be aware of any ethanol bills that are filed. Just as the whatever, somebody give me an issue. Say, name some topic, hot button topic.
Abortion.
I knew you were going to say that. So there are pro and con abortion groups in the state of Missouri and across the country who are paying attention to all the abortion bills. So we have 8 abortion bills filed already in the pre-filing? Yeah, easily 8 bills filed already in the state of Missouri for or against abortion. So you know Missouri Right to Life is watching it, you know Planned Parenthood is watching it, you know all the healthcare groups are watching it because they're going to have to deal with it, you know all these legal groups are watching it because they see potential legal cases involved with this legislation. You know the ACLU and other interest groups are watching this abortion legislation, just as people on the pro and con side of the legislation that the Missouri corn growers bring forward or agriculture brings forward. They're watching this legislation. So they're paid to be aware, and they're going to be involved before, during, and after the process as well. So the bill has been filed. At that point, is in the ownership. Let me back up a second. When somebody introduces a bill, they're now referred to as the sponsor of the legislation. And you'll often hear a term called co-sponsor. That means somebody, a senator or representative, has signed on in support of the legislation. And being a co-sponsor doesn't mean that you're out. It could mean there's no real definition. There's no real responsibility to that title if you're a co-sponsor of a piece of legislation. You might be at the forefront fighting it out there. You might be taking all the credit in the world for it, or you might have just put your name on a piece of paper. It's anywhere in between. So when the sponsor introduces the bill, it then goes to the hands of the president or the speaker of the House, President Pro Tem or the Speaker of the House, and they were going to refer it to a committee. And if they know a lot about this bill, or they're passionate about a bill, they will send it to a friendly committee. If they don't know anything about the bill, they will possibly listen to the advice of their staff or the sponsor to send it to a proper committee for a good forward life, a good life. If they don't like a bill, there are committees designated as places that dreams go to die. So that bill could possibly be sent to one of these committees, where it's just not going to get any action. Okay. This is also where lobbyists and advocacy groups and other legislators, what have you, all these people who are paid to be aware or who are being involved in the process, who are being advocates for the legislation or against the legislation, are stepping forward and expressing, hey, this bill needs a great committee or this bill needs a bad committee. Okay? So once the bill is referred to committee, now the responsibility is shifting to the chairman or chairwoman, chairperson of that committee. Again, if that chairperson is passionate about the bill, doesn't like the bill, or is apathetic to the bill, it's going to have a huge impact on the future, or the immediate future, of that bill. There were plenty of bills in the Agriculture Committee that came to us, which went into a drawer and never saw daylight again. Those might have been bills that might have been supported by some agriculture groups. They might have not been supported by some agriculture groups. But it was a bill that we didn't like for some reason. It went into a drawer and that was it. That was the power of the chairman or the chief of staff. If it's something that we're passionate about and it's very important to agriculture or whatever group or whatever sponsor is out there with a piece of legislation, we might get it into a committee hearing the very next week, the very next available committee hearing. Otherwise, it's going to go get into the committee process, and like I said, it could be an immediate hearing, it could be a delayed hearing, it could be a bill that just goes onto a calendar and say, well, we've got a hearing scheduled and we need some more legislation to hear, let's throw it in there and just have the hearing on it. So it's going to go to the committee process. And the committee process, you've all seen the movies, I'm sure, where they go into great big halls of Congress. And they have these huge bays of cameras and everything where people are lined up and you stand in front of people and you pledge allegiance to God and country that you're going to tell the truth. Well, that doesn't happen at the Missouri Legislature. This is more representative of what happens at the Missouri Legislature. This is actually the Senate lounge where we told you the Ag Committee has their hearings in the Senate. And you see, these are the tapestries I was talking about. There's a dais there. The senators are sitting in their chairs, and people come up to this little tiny table, and they testify to the bill. Sometimes they read testimony. Sometimes they speak from their head or their heart about the bill. The bill sponsor comes up and presents the bill to the committee and takes questions from the committee on the merits of the bill. The committee, it's a bipartisan committee. The majority party has the majority of the seats on the committee, so all the committees in the Missouri Legislature will be Republican, just as it will be in the United States Congress, the forthcoming session. So it will be majority Republican. But the Democrats will be there as well, and they have the power to ask questions. So if there is a Democrat on there that doesn't understand or doesn't like a Republican bill that's being sponsored, there's the time where the sponsor is going to be grilled. And that's where the sponsor needs to be empowered and educated and informed about all the merits and demerits, strengths and weaknesses of the legislation. Because I've seen a poor presentation from a sponsor kill a bill many, many times. If a sponsor is not prepared, if a sponsor is not informed, if a sponsor doesn't have great testimonial witnesses who come up, this is, I think that's former Senator Crowell, and this is a witness that comes up. So the sponsor sits there during all the testimony in the Missouri Legislature. As witnesses pro and con come up and sit right next to him and her and offer their support or non-support for the legislation in front of the committee. So the sponsor's got to be super prepared for anything that could come forth. And this is the point where the public is allowed. You just have to walk in and sometimes you sign your name to a list that you're there, or sometimes they just call for witnesses and whoever shows up, shows up. Most times the sponsor or the supporters of the bill have organized a presentation. This is who's going to testify, this is who's going to say something, this is who's just going to walk up and say, me too, I'm in support. And sign a testimony sheet that says I'm in support of the bill. Sometimes random strangers from Missouri or outside of Missouri show up to testify on bills that are unbeknownst to anybody. They just show up and do it, as is their right to do so, as our forefathers Lewis and Clark set forth in Missouri to do so. That's the fun part. So this person could be you, will be you, come February, when we send you in to testify in a committee, if we get to that part, if the days line up, etc. To testify in committee in support or opposition to a bill. So that's where the public gets involved. That's where we're empowering people, empowering sponsors, etc. And again, have issues well traveled. Lobbyists can come from D.C. or other states or wherever to come in and speak against the merits of the bill. When we were doing the ethanol process in 2007, we had folks coming in from D.C. and Ohio and all these places where all these think tanks and all these oil groups were headquartered at. And they hunkered down in Jefferson City and they worked and worked and worked. They were there at committee hearings. They were there in our office every day telling us, well, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. We're going to lose 10% of the market share. Oh my gosh. The world hasn't ended. It's surprising how much legislation that opponents say are going to end the world, and we're still here today. All this legislation passed, it's going to end the world, and we're still here today. So folks are coming in from all over the place, and they're going to support or oppose the legislative idea. And whether they do it in the committee process, whether they do it in the before, during, and after process, they're going to be out there involved and expressing their opinions. So the committee hears the bill and takes a vote on the bill and passes the bill. If the committee defeats the bill, that's it. The bill's dead. Done. It's turned back in to the president of the Senate's office or the Speaker of the House's office, and it's just filed away. It's dead. Killed in committee. If it's passed, it's still referred back to the president or the Speaker of the House, and then it's put on the formal calendar for full debate by the full body of the legislature, the Senate or the House. Okay? So there, all the committees there's 10, 12 committees in the Missouri Senate. There's who knows how many committees. They're doing some reorganization right now in the Missouri House, but I think last year there was like 40, maybe 50 committees in the Missouri House, all reporting legislation in to this calendar. So there's some 2,000 bills were filed in the last session of the legislature, and they were all seeking time on this calendar. So there's a lot of competition there. Again, this is another point where advocacy is important. That it's important for y'all to talk to your representatives and say, this bill, it sure would be great to get this on the calendar. It sure would be great to keep this moving forward. It sure would be great if this bill stopped dead today. They need to hear from the constituents. They need to hear from the advocacy groups. They need to hear from the lobbyists. They need to hear from their peers. They need to hear from their staff as far as where this committee or where this bill needs to go on this calendar and how fast it should get to the floor for full debate. So it goes to the floor. Let me back up a second and talk more about the full floor debate. So the debate's taking place in the Senate chamber, which we were in this morning, or the House chamber, which we looked in a window and saw. Everybody there, be they Republican, Democrat, urban, rural, what have you, is empowered to ask questions and debate with the sponsor or debate with supporters of the bill regarding the merits or their opposition to the piece of legislation. They're also able to amend or offer substitutes or make changes to the legislation. This is where the debate takes place. This is where the sausage is being made, right there on the floor in a full public view. You sit up there in that visitors gallery, and it's like watching lions eat Christians sometimes when people aren't prepared and they're not, they're surprised with substitutes or surprised with amendments, what have you, surprised with a filibuster. I remember one time we had one. It was a privatization bill to privatize some government services, and we rolled it out there. We knew we were going to have opposition. It turned into a 3-hour filibuster by the Democrat leader, and the bill was laid over, and it was never returned to again because nobody wanted to stand up and fight through a filibuster for the privatization of government services at that point. This is back in the early aughts. So there's a vote taken when the bill's finally gotten to that point. The bill is voted on by the full Senate, and then there's a second round vote, and if it passes those two votes, it goes to the other chamber. So a Senate bill would go to the House for House process, and a House bill would come to the Senate for Senate processing, and Senate handling and Senate voting. So it goes through almost the same process, but different. Because no piece of legislation is perfect until everybody has had their say, left their fingerprint on it, done some sort of self-important work, if maybe, in the eyes of that elected person. They tweak something, they make some change to make this law a better law. So nothing is ever final until everybody's had their say, is what we used to say about it. So they put their fingerprints all over the piece of legislation. And the lobbyists are still there. They're still there through this process, whether they're giving information to representatives and senators who might be opposed to the bill to empower their arguments, whether they're helping the supporters, whether they're whatever they're paid to do by their clients, they're going to be there doing it. Just as these people could be advocates from organizations like Missouri Corn Growers or whoever. These folks never go away. These are some of the thousands of people you're going to see walking the hallways, sitting on those benches, working with the legislators, working on legislation when we come back in February. So the bill goes through the whole process, the committee process, the floor debate, what have you, and it's changed. It's changed from its original format. It's changed from the Senate bill goes over to the House, and the House makes amendments. Then it has to go back to the Senate to see if the Senate is accepting of those House changes. Okay? So again, we've got amendments. Somebody could have offered a substitute bill, which might just change the entire structure of the bill. The only thing that might be different, or the only thing that might be the same sometimes, is the title and the bill number. But it's generally that doesn't happen as much as amendments happen. People are putting on their ideas. People are putting on similar ideas. Things become what's referred to as an omnibus bill. We saw that last year with the omnibus agriculture bill that the governor ended up vetoing because there was a piece in there that somebody had amended that he didn't like. So everything in there got canceled. It got deleted. It got vetoed. So the changes happened to the bill from one body to the other. What happens then is if the Senate does not accept the House changes or the House does not accept the Senate changes, it goes to what's called a conference committee. And this is another meeting. It's a smaller committee made up of House members and Senate members on partisan levels. So there'd be like 3 Republican House members, 3 Republican Senate members, and 2 Democrat members who are on the committee. And whether they have an interest and all are part of the legislation, they'll meet in a conference committee and the bill will be reviewed again. And almost go through the whole process. And this is what something like that looks like. This is a House Budget Committee, conference committee, where they're stuck into, this is actually the Benton Gallery that we couldn't get into either with the mural. You can see a little bit of the mural there on the wall. But they set up tables and everybody crowds into small rooms because there's, towards the end of the year, there's like 10 of these things going on at one time. So people are in nooks and crannies and crammed into senators' offices and such. It's not as formal as the committee hearing you saw the first time. So these folks, there's staff, there's people, there's all these papers on the table. It's very convoluted and it can be very messy. But if it's the conference committee, this is where some real changes can be handled. And then the conference committee, if they decide to pass the bill out of conference, it's called a conference substitute. And it goes back through the whole process again. The Senate has to accept the conference substitute and the House has to accept the conference substitute. And the lobbyists are going to be in these conference committees as well. The advocacy groups are going to be in these conference committees as well, getting their fingerprints on it all along the way. So we get both bodies to agree on one final version of a bill, and it's what's called TEFPA, truly agreed and finally passed. Both bodies have passed the piece of legislation, okay? But it's still not a law yet. Because it has to go to the second floor. It has to go down to the governor's office. Remember, we were standing outside the governor's office? This would be representative of that, where there's a line of legislation to get to the governor. In this place, representation is Claire McCaskill, I guess, looking into the future, right? Yeah. So the corn bill's in the line of legislation and lobbyists and elected representatives who are trying to get the governor's attention to sign the bill or veto the bill. The governor can do 3 different actions. They can sign the bill right away, and it will become law on its effective date, which is August 28th in Missouri, unless there's an emergency clause. And if there's an emergency clause, and it's a case of like all the Joplin recovery legislation, those had emergency clauses that took place upon enactment, upon signature. Those are fairly rare. So this bill, if the governor chose to sign it, would become law on August 28th. If the governor vetoed it, there's a certain timeline for them to veto a bill upon their receipt of the bill. So they could veto it, and if it's during the legislative session, then the legislature can decide to bring that bill back up and do a veto override during the session. We saw that last year with the tax cut bill that the legislature had passed, the governor vetoed. They overrode the veto during session. They can do what's called a pocket veto, which the governor decides to take no action on it, and then the bill is vetoed by no action. Okay? So the governor in this case has signed the corn bill. It is now corn law. It's all grown up and happy and shiny there. There ought to be a law. So on August 28th, this will take effect. Everything's hunky-dory, that's great. We all pat ourselves on the backs, light a cigar, and go to the country club, right? Right? Wrong. Because everybody's paying attention. Now, this is really when people pay attention. Now you're going to get the media even more so paying attention. Writing articles, writing editorials about why this was a bad idea, why this was a good idea, etc. Now it's catching the general population's attention because holy crap, this is going to be a law. Holy crap, we're going to put 10% of corn kernels in our gas tank? How the hell did that happen? Who didn't stop that? So everybody starts paying attention at that point. And then people start lawyering up. The third branch of government, the judicial branch of government, people will file injunctions, appeals, what have you, to stop the laws from taking effect. And then those are filed in our circuit court here in Cole County, which then, depending on their action, potentially ends up in the Missouri Supreme Court, which is the red brick building across from the Capitol, if you saw that. So, it's not every bill that becomes law, ends up in court, but it's a lot these days. It is a lot of legislation that goes to court. Have we had anything in agriculture go to court lately? never ends. Yeah, we got the headline corn won the day, or whatever interest won the day, or whatever bill was passed, but it never ends because now you've got defense. You might have a court defense. You might have people coming back to file bills to cancel out your law that you just passed the following session. You might have groups out there campaigning just to get attention based on their opposition to your legislation that's passed. Missouri is, they're not a primary seatbelt law, or we've got a .08 drunk driving thing. Those are things that people still make hay at that are current law. They're not actively working to pass the law or change the law, but they're out there making hay, making money, getting attention for their group or their interest based on current law. So it never ends. We're constantly in a defense stance once your legislation passes. So that's how a bill becomes a law in Missouri. Kind of complicated, kind of messy, kind of sausage-like. A little bit. Any thoughts, questions, suggestions for improvement?
If we were to vote on something, where does that fit into that whole scheme?
You mean at the ballot? Like
Right.
Sure, an amendment. Okay, the legislature can pass joint resolutions, which are the ballot questions. Like last year we had, or last November, we had, geez, that was only 6 weeks ago. We had like 10 ballot questions on the ballot, okay? Amendment 1 through Amendment 10. Some of those were passed by the legislature. Amendment 1 was passed by the legislature, right? That was passed as a joint resolution and placed upon the ballot. It wasn't something that the governor had any input in. It was something that the legislature says, let's let the public take a vote. Just the same as the road tax earlier in the year. That was passed by the legislature and put on the ballot. Amendment 3, which was teacher tenure, was an initiative petition. That was when the Teach Great organization went around the state gathering signatures on a petition. So many thousand from so many congressional districts. You have to have a representative number of people signing this petition to get it to the ballots. It's turned into the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State confirms that these are all legit signatures. And then it's placed, if it's approved, then it's placed on the ballot. Now there's court cases and such. You can try to knock it off the ballot. There are several lawsuits filed against that Amendment 3 before it got to the ballot, but that was done by initiative petition. The same as, you could start an initiative petition to do whatever. Lower the voting age to 16, make everybody eat a ear of corn at lunch, however you want to do it. It's almost the same thing. Yeah, good. And if enough people agreed with you and got it through the process, it would end up on the ballot, and then you'd have to run a campaign to make enough people aware, make enough voters aware, so that they would support, vote yes, or defeat, vote no on that question on the ballot. So it's one of two ways they end up with those questions end up through the legislature, without the governor's approval, or through initiative petition. And we're seeing more and more initiative petitions in Missouri these days because interest groups, good, bad, indifferent, from whoever's perspective, feel that they can't get things through the legislature because the legislature is so right-wing or so Republican or so whatever barriers they feel they have more success getting changes to the laws in Missouri through the initiative petition process versus going through the legislature. Did I leave anything out?
That was very well explained.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That was on video too, so. So, again, with the advocacy, we've got to get these people's attention, whether they're Republican or Democrat, rural or urban, black or white, gay or straight, good looking or ugly. We've got to get their attention on our issues and be involved with them, and be informing them and being educating them and developing those relationships so they trust you as a source of information. We've got, I won't run through all these, but we talked about this yesterday. Not many folks have talked to their Republican or representative or senator, right? You haven't talked to your congressperson or senator or U.S. senator, right? Nobody's talked to a president. Nobody's talked to the president. Anybody talked to a king? All right.
town over in New York, though.
Huh?
There's a prince in town over in New York.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah,
Close as we can get.
that's right. Future king. Are you guys emailing these folks? Are you talking to them on social media? Are you friends with them on Facebook? Are you following them on Twitter? I know you guys aren't following them on Twitter yet, but you will be. Are you writing letters to these folks? Have you had any of these like non-personal kind of communications with these folks? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Can we get some letterhead down here? Dear President Obama.
And I have your autograph.
That's right. Well, listen, guys, we got plenty of opportunities because from the president on down to your sewer district director, there are more than 500,000 elected officials in this country. Were you aware that our kings were so plentiful in this country? Our road districts, our ambulance districts, our school boards, our state representatives, our city councils, our county commissioners. These people are all doing things which impact us. Who's got a county health board, an elected county health board? Anybody? Boone County does. Well,
Well, a health ordinance, I don't know if it's elected officials for that.
yeah. Well, we saw in up northeast where Marion County, Hannibal, they had a county health board, the elected county health board with their county health ordinance, and how that impacted animal agriculture in that area. These are things that are happening at the very local level, like one of your direct neighbors probably, or at least somebody that you know from some connection, church, school, family, cousin, whatever, that was attacking animal agriculture in Marion County in rural Missouri. So these folks are everywhere. They don't have to be a president. These elected leaders are impacting us everywhere. So that's why we've got to be involved, know who these are, and be communicating with them, because they're not paying attention. They don't know. I Googled sleeping politicians, and the web hits were like 30 million, but then I got the images here of all these people sleeping across the country in their elected roles. It's very easy to do, by the way. It's very boring when it gets into the minutiae of things. So you also, here's who you've got to really connect with, is the staff. Like, right, lobbyists? You've got to know the staff. This is my friend Kevin McCarthy. He's the majority leader of the Republican Party in the United States Congress. Okay, and this is all his staff, or some of his staff. That's not all of his staff, but he's just walking from one side of the U.S. Capitol to the other, and he's surrounded not by the Secret Service but by his staff people. These people all have his ear. He's listening and taking advice and consent from these folks based on the research and information and relationships they have with the people who are advocating or lobbying them, and influencing them, or the media sources that are influencing them. He doesn't have time to meet with the thousands of people a day that want his attention, but that's the job of the staff members. So you've got to connect with the staff as well, or become one. Never forget the staff, even though they are busy or sleeping through committee hearings.
Gus, is it the staff that actually write the language of these bills and ultimately the law?
It is not, for the most part, it is not those guys that were hanging out with Kevin. It's legislative staff outside of the individual elected offices. We talked about Senate research and House research when we were at the Capitol. Those are staff attorneys who are writing the legislation, writing the bills, writing the amendments, writing the what substitutes, whatever. And they're providing, if asked, they're not supposed to be proactive in influencing the legislators, but they are supposed to provide advice and consent to the legislators if inquired upon. Okay? So they're attorneys who put the ideas into the statutory language. Because you just can't say, by God, everybody should eat corn at noon every day of the week. You can't say that and put that into statutes. You can say, well, section 123.222, all Missourians shall do this, that, and ever. A lot of things are hung up on the words may and shall by them. That'll trip up a lot of people. May is voluntary, shall is compulsory. So let's look here. These are our congressional districts. We're down to 8 congressional districts in Missouri from the 9 we had a couple years ago, from the 10 we had a decade-ish ago. You guys are, I think we have everybody here, somebody here from each one of these districts. If you're not represented, if you're not here, never mind. Raise your hand if you're not here. That's what I was trying to say. Our current, if you turn to your, the pictures, the picture book, the Facebook in the agenda there, that page right there that you got open, we'll look at our congressional staff, our congressional delegation. We've got 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. We have 2 farmers. We have 2 career elected officials. We have 1 auctioneer, which I don't know if those are good or bad for farming. Depends, I guess, right? 1 former ambassador. We have 1 banker and 1 preacher that make up our congressional delegation. We have 5 men and 3 women. We have 5 city cousins and 3 country cousins amongst our federal delegation. So, if you were just looking at black and white, you would say that CornRoots have a pretty tough row with our federal delegation, wouldn't you? Well, because they've been here, they've earned the trust, they've worked with them at all their levels of their career, they do have a good, pretty much open door with your entire federal delegation, Shane?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shane's texting Representative Cleaver from Kansas City right now.
I do like the guy.
He is a pretty cool cat.
He supported Amendment 1.
He did.
There you go. See, well, he's got part of rural Missouri now, too. This is our House map. These are the 163 House districts of Missouri. You are all on this map as well. As I said over at the Capitol, we have 117 Republicans and 46 Democrats, a historic veto-proof margin. If the governor vetoes anything, and just a party line vote will override that veto. It's the job of the Speaker of the House to keep all those Republican cats in the basket with them on things like that. Sometimes they jump out for various reasons. Speaker Deal, John Deal, is from Town and Country, Missouri. As I said in the hallway, more town than country. Lives in St. Louis County, and he's an attorney. The Democrat leaders are all from St. Louis, Kansas City, and Columbia. It's pretty much, we've got these 3 coasts. There's little 3 blue dots in Kansas City, in Columbia, and St. Louis. I guess there's 1 or 2 down in Springfield that are Democrats. But for the most part, everything else is completely red in the state of Missouri and in the Missouri House of Representatives. This is the Missouri Senate. 34 districts make up the Missouri Senate. We currently have 25, or we will in January have 25 Republicans and 9 Democrats. Senate Pro Tem Tom Dempsey is one of the longest tenured legislators in the entire body, and he's younger than me too. That's weird. It really flips me out sometimes. Majority, huh?
You look younger.
I do. He's great. That's what happens when you're in the legislature. Tom Dempsey, him and his family own a restaurant and a hotel in St. Charles. I guess they're connected to agriculture in that way. They're one of our distributors. Majority Floor Leader Ron Richard is from Joplin. He owns a bowling alley. True story. Assistant Majority Leader Kehoe is here from Jefferson City. He owns some car dealerships. He sold those, and now he's an elected official, professional elected official, I guess. Very involved in a lot of other things. All the Democrats are from St. Louis and Kansas City. Again, our urban cousins. The rural-urban split in the Senate is also the partisan split. We do have Republican representation into St. Louis County and Jackson County areas because the districts overlap and such. But for the most part, those are still Democrat elected strongholds.
Quick story on Dempsey. This kind of relates back to what we were talking about yesterday, related, and what Gus will talk about in a minute. But last year we had the big E15 discussion, and Dempsey controls a lot of what happens on the Senate floor, what moves forward, what doesn't. What we needed to have happen is a piece of a resolution not move forward, so we didn't want this to keep moving. And so we sat down with Dempsey, and he was skeptical